Have you or a student in your class received a memory aid accommodation for an upcoming assessment? Watch this video to learn more about what memory aids are, your responsibilities in the submission and approval process, and how to create one. A memory aid is an accommodation that can be used during graded assessments and is only provided in limited and specific cases. To receive it, students must provide significant evidence of a medical condition or learning disability where they can learn information but struggle to retrieve it from memory without cues or triggers. When creating this tool, students must identify content that is most difficult for them to recall, and then code that information into mnemonics or symbols on an 8.5 by 11 single-sided page. This document can be hand-drawn, typed, or a combination of both, and it must be legible, in English, and only the student who created the tool should be able to understand what the symbols mean. As such, this tool does not replace studying, and students must have a solid understanding of course content for the tool to be useful. Developing and rehearsing these codes early in the semester by adding them into your weekly class notes can help make triggers more meaningful and effective. Like all accommodations, memory aids should promote equity while also adhering to academic integrity. They are not answer sheets and therefore cannot include any clear course content on them, such as definitions, course diagrams, or other written examples. Formulas can sometimes be included depending on course objectives and the professor's judgment. If the course objective is that students should be able to know and reproduce a formula, it would not be allowed. If the objective is that students only need to demonstrate the ability to apply a formula, it may be allowed. Either way, the professor will determine whether the content jeopardizes the integrity of an assessment and may or may not allow formulas on the memory aid. In many cases, a separate formula sheet accommodation could be beneficial. Formula sheets are also a single-sided 8.5 by 11 page that can be typed or handwritten. They should only contain formulas that the student struggles to retrieve and should not include any titles, instructions, steps, conversions, or examples. Students can request this additional accommodation from their SAS advisor. The memory aid submission process should include the student, their SAS advisor, and the professor. Students must also follow these steps for each assessment that they plan to use the memory aid. First, students are responsible for requesting this accommodation from their SAS advisor. Students must request the accommodation early each term. Students must also identify what specific courses they will need the accommodation for and whether the professor has allowed any other types of aids for those assignments. Advisors will then review the request and the student's disability-related documentation. Given the complexity of these issues and the potential impact on academic outcomes, SAS often does a third-party review of the documentation as well. If the advisor approves the memory aid accommodation, students must then activate the accommodation in the SAS student portal, similar to other accommodations. Once activated, students are required to learn how to create an appropriate memory aid. They should discuss the procedure with their advisor, and also watch this video or meet with the SAS Writing and Learning Specialist for more information. After creating the memory aid, students must email it to their professor with their advisor copied. Students are responsible for sending this email at least 7 days before the assessment. The professor will then review the memory aid. During this stage, the professor can either approve the memory aid, request revisions, or disallow the tool entirely if they determine that its content compromises course objectives or academic integrity. When issues are identified, professors should offer the student the opportunity to revise and resubmit their memory aid if there is time to do so. Professors are responsible for upholding academic integrity and must not approve a memory aid that includes clear course content. Once the professor believes that the tool is completely coded and does not compromise academic integrity, they are required to send clear approval by email to the student or provide the student with a hard copy that is signed and dated. Students must then submit the memory aid to the exam center with the professor's approval clearly documented, either by email or by dropping off a copy at the exam center. The memory aid must be submitted at least 3 business days before the assessment. On the day of the assessment, the exam center staff will give the student their memory aid. The student must hand in the memory aid with their completed assessment as well. If the student does not follow these steps or meet the required timelines, it is likely they will not be allowed to use the memory aid for that assessment. Here is a checklist you can review to confirm your responsibilities. Please pause the video as needed. When reviewing course material, identify what topics might appear on the exam and what parts of them might be the most difficult to recall. You need to plan ahead by identifying important topics and breaking them down into the parts that are the most difficult recalling, because you cannot include all course content on a memory aid, and overcrowding it can make finding relevant triggers during the assessment more challenging. Next, create mnemonic devices or visuals to help prompt recall of that information. Mnemonic devices are memory devices that represent course content and act like a key to a locked filing cabinet. The information you learned is already stored in your memory, but you may just need a hint or a nudge to help unlock it. Mnemonic devices can range from simple to abstract and should be created by the student. What types of mnemonic devices can you use on your memory aid? There are so many options. Try creating acronyms where you use one word to represent a larger phrase or group of words. For example, BEDMAS is an acronym for the standard order of operations in a math problem. Acrostics are another great option, where you create a phrase and the first letter of each word in that phrase represents something else that you are trying to recall. For example, my very educated mother just served us nachos represents the order of the planets. Does course content ever remind you of a song? Add in some song lyrics too. For example, Taylor Swift's lyric, "We are never ever ever getting back together," could help represent an irreversible chemical reaction. You can also include visuals on your memory aid, as long as they are not diagrams that were used in class. Diagrams created by you without labels are okay to include. You can also develop your own simple images, symbols, or emojis to represent course content. Use them on their own or combined together to help recall content that is more complex. For example, if you need to remember the 5 stages of Maslow's hierarchy of needs in their order, ask yourself what image could represent each stage, and then line those symbols up beside each other. After creating some mnemonic devices, do a test drive and try them out. If they are not triggering your memory, you may need to practice them more or think of a different mnemonic tool. It can also be helpful to organize the page in a way that helps you identify specific content easier as well, like using different colors for different types of information, grouping similar content together, or adding section dividers on the page. Remember that everyone's memory aid will look different, so choose devices and organizational strategies most helpful for you. In summary, it is a shared responsibility of students, professors, and advisors to understand the purpose of memory aids, follow the proper submission process, and ensure that cues support equity and academic integrity. Working together will help ensure that these accommodations are fair, meaningful, and aligned with course goals.